You're listening to the Hustle Podcast with Justin Harrison.
Thank you so much, Justin. Yes, definitely. As a new startup, especially around the food industry, because this is a quite new one for me, but I'm really interested in how do you manage a team or partnership, basically, when there's equal partners. How does that management work? Who does what? And basically within a startup company.
Yes, I mean, the first thing I would say is you should probably never have partnerships. Partnerships is like the last option when all else fails. If you do have partnerships, you need to make sure that it's a relationship that you absolutely can trust and that you've done your homework on the person or the people and that you are comfortable walking a very long journey with them. Now let's get to the actual point of who does what. I think the important thing to understand is that in order to enter into a partnership, whether it's equal or unequal, it's based on the premise that somebody brings something that you don't have. So the idea is for people to focus on the thing that they bring to the table. If the person is there because they bring money, let them bring money, and that's then the area of competence. If the person brings sales and marketing skill sets, that's the thing they need to focus on. And so I go back to the thing of what I said about having partnerships. You should only have partnerships under very rare circumstances. A lot of people enter into partnerships from a security perspective purely because they want somebody to run this path with them, to be part of the journey, right? And not to be lonely. But really, it's about fulfilling a void that you have. That is why you take on a partnership. And you have to hold that person or that party accountable for doing the thing and the reason why you brought them into the partnership for the first place. So you have to sit down, study your area of competence, know exactly what it is that you bring to the table, know exactly what it is that your partners bring to the table, and don't expect them to do things that you are supposed to be doing and vice versa. This is how you create good partnerships. You've got to be absolutely critically clear and down the line about who does what when it comes to partnerships.
Oh, that is actually quite, I need to think about it. I need to have a really good conversation with my partner in the sense about with the business, because this is why I've asked, because it's going to lead into the next question. If one partner is quite equipped with one thing, and I'm talking about coming from a city and going into a small town, it's difficult sometimes for me to grasp and understand how people in small towns think, right? Because my engagement is different. And this is something that my partner really does really well. But in terms of technology and all those other things and managing and basically just doing the normal managing of the business, but in terms of knowing how to speak into that world or tap into that world, brilliant. So how do you do cash flow and equity in terms of profit sharing when it comes to things like that?
Again, it's a very simple equation. How much is that person's competence and expertise worth to you, right? So the way to equate this is, can you run the business successfully without them? And if the answer is yes, then that means that their value is a lot less than you think. And this is why I say people need to really think deeply before they go into partnerships, because it's only when you sit down and ask these questions and think about it critically that you understand you are purchasing a skill set. You're purchasing an area of competence. And the way you're purchasing that is by giving up some equity. And this is no different than employing somebody. You would pay somebody more dependent on what they bring to the table. If what they bring to the table is a big part of you making money and a big part of your success, you're going to pay them more money, right? It's a time value equation. I often tell people the story about when I used to consult. There was a time when I was consulting to companies and I was charging $500 an hour, and I eventually went up to $10,000 an hour. And I couldn't get rid of customers. And I realized why, because I was invaluable to them. They couldn't get rid of me. I was core to their business. And so a partnership is exactly the same thing. It's about understanding that you're buying competence, you're buying a skill set, you're buying an area of expertise that you don't have. And the only reason you take on partnerships is for there to be a void to fill that you cannot fill yourself. There is no point in you saying, well, listen, I need two people to be in the business, and taking on two people with the exact same skill set. Because I promise you right now, if you go and take on a partner who's got the same skill sets as you, you're going to eventually clash heads. You're eventually going to fall out of partnership. So this is about figuring out what that person is worth to you. And if you think that that person is worth giving up 20% equity in the business because you believe they're going to contribute 20% of the overall business and they can provide 20% value into the business, then you give them 20%. If you believe they're worth 80%, then you give them 80%. And I think when people look at partnerships, they look at it purely from a personal perspective. They want to retain equity and they're looking at it in the sense that, they want to hold on to the money. When I go into partnerships, I'm going, how do I get that person's expertise into my business? And how do I incentivize them to be part of this journey? And I would not incentivize anyone and give anyone equity if they weren't absolutely damn valuable to me.
This makes me think a lot because at this moment I'm thinking about potential, what I can see if I up coach. And that's where I'm currently at this moment because the up coaching, I think I'm a bit impatient with that at this moment because I can see the potential.
Let me ask the question quickly. When you say up coach, are you referring to up coaching your partner that you're taking on?
Yes. Specifically in the sense.
Well, then we're not having a discussion because you shouldn't be coaching your partners. Your partner comes on to provide an area of expertise that you don't have. Certainly you guys can share skill sets and share knowledge, but if you have to coach somebody, then that's not a partner, that's an employee. And you need to understand that. And one of the hard things for a startup business is they often go, well, I don't have money to pay for employees. So what we're going to do is we're going to give up equity. And that's the biggest mistake you can ever make, right? Yeah. So you need to figure out, is this person a partner or is this person an employee? And you must understand that you can incentivize employees through things other than equity. You can give them profit shares, which is not the same as equity. Equity means that you and I both have a shared responsibility in this business. If the ship goes down, we go down together. If we go into debt, we go into debt together. If we succeed, we succeed together. And you need to understand there is a very big difference between saying you're going to coach somebody who's a partner and coach somebody who's an employee. I can tell you just immediately from that statement alone tells me you probably shouldn't be going into partnership.
It's just the confidence thing. I think it's that's why it's always called competence. And I'm saying purely because I'm going to be honest with you. In a lot of my families, I am the only person that's thinking about starting a business. So everybody is employees. So when it comes to knowing and seeing. So it's the confidence thing. It's not so much the doing, it's the confidence in with themselves to think that they can do it and they can speak about it and they can all those things. Because I believe life is limitless. Thanks to my tribe, but I mean life is limitless.
Incentivize them through profit and profit sharing, retain equity, and get around other people who actually understand how to run businesses and have conversations with people who run businesses and spend time with people who run businesses, and you'll have a completely different conversation. Sure. The fact that you want to go out in the world and do good and raise everybody up is a very nice thing, but business is business. Business is about making money. Business is about competence. Business is about skill set. And if you are there simply being a charity case, you are not a business. You are now an NGO, and you're not an NGO. You are a business, and it is about making money.
I think that's the reason why I'm irritated. That's the reason I'm honestly thinking why I'm always irritated or I'm frustrated at most of the time, because of my constantly needing to think for someone else.
That's not a partner.
Yeah,
that's not a partner.
I figured as much. So, my one of my other questions is on another thing, because this is the only one that all the other businesses that I'm the only person, because I want to go through everything myself. But the one thing that I want to know, when do you know about the exit plan? When do you know you are successful, and when do you execute an exit plan in any form of business? When does that happen? Do you do it in the beginning where you kind of have your number, or is it when the growth or the scaling? How does it work in terms of, I'm specifically thinking now as a new startup venturing into something that I think could be lucrative, potentially very lucrative. Yeah.
Okay, so there's two parts to that question. The first part is, when do you plan your exit strategy? You plan your exit strategy the day you start the business. The day you start a business, You create it as if you intend to sell it. And nobody tells you this at Entrepreneurship School 101. The day you open up a business and start trading is the day you decide you're going to prepare it for sale. You need to keep the house clean. You need to run the books properly. You need to employ people properly. You need to have proper contracts in place with your suppliers, proper contracts in place with your clients. You need to make it as if somebody's going to come in there tomorrow and buy that business. And from day one, run it properly. Because here's what happens. You build up a track record. You build up a history. You build up an asset. 20 years time, you decide to sell that business. You got 20 years of consistent records, 20 years of consistent contracts, 20 years of proof of track record, right? I get so many businesses say, oh, we're worth X amount. We say, okay, show us your tax returns. And they've been dodging their tax returns for the last 20 years. That's a business you can't value. You've got to pay your tax honestly. You've got to do everything properly. You've got to employ the right people. You've got to treat it like it is a business from day one. This is how you plan for an exit strategy. You plan for an exit strategy by treating it like a proper business from day one. That's number one. Number two is the question of when is the exit strategy? Well, the exit strategy is dependent on a lot of things. And it's partly one, the business, and partly two, the entrepreneur. I think some entrepreneurs need to exit from a business and sell on and move on the moment they lose the passion for what they're doing, the moment they become stagnant, the moment they can't reignite themselves to grow and push. And what you need to understand about building businesses is you're going to hit a fucking wall so many times that you're going to make your own head spin. You're going to get to a point where you've knocked your head so many times that you might not want to get back up again. And if you can't get back up again, that is probably the time for you to get out. If you can't motivate yourself, if you can't push yourself, if you're not excited to get in and build and grow and create something in an industry, then you probably should be getting out. So the entrepreneur is number one. Number two comes to the business itself. And I've bought and sold and been in a lot of different businesses. And this is my number one rule. When we reach market saturation, when there is no more room to grow, that is the time to get out. It's like anything in life. You want to exit at the top. And so I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of hanging on too long. I've also seen a lot of entrepreneurs make the mistake of not hanging in long enough. So the question on when to exit really comes down to, number one, yourself as an individual and how you feel. But number two, how is the business doing? Has it reached market saturation? If you've got 80% of the market share in your industry, you probably should look at getting out if there's a willing buyer. If you're sitting with 10% market share, you probably shouldn't look to get out if you're still passionate about the business. And so this is really a weighing machine. But if you set everything up right from the beginning, do everything properly, you will know as the entrepreneur when it's time to get out. I have instinctually known every business when I've sold out. I've known when to sell. I've had businesses where I've had offers on the table and I've rejected them for 7 years in a row. And year 8, I've woken up and I've gone, it's now time. You just know as an entrepreneur, when you connected to the thing that you're doing, when the problems become real problems that you don't want to deal with anymore, when the people become full of shit and you don't want to deal with their shit anymore, when the industry becomes bureaucratic and you don't want to deal with it anymore, that's the time when you have that conversation with yourself. Yeah. But you should be planning for your exit from day one.
Oh, no. Thank you very much. I kind of did that already in my head, but I never actually wrote it down because for some weird reason, I felt weird about doing it. But in my head, back of my mind, I already know what I want to do. Because the thing is, sometimes I get bored because I've got ADHD. But is it really boredom because of something? So that's why I always need to know when exactly is it that I want to get out. But that is something really, really nice. Thank you, Justin. Yeah.
So here's a free piece of advice for you since you've got ADHD. I can relate. You're probably going to be terrible at running a business. You're going to be great at starting it. So you need to find yourself a really good operational manager. You need to find yourself somebody who you can rely on or people you can rely on, that you can go out and start stuff and create stuff and build stuff, but have a machine behind you that operates it. Now, that's extremely hard when you're starting out. When you're starting out, you're going to have to shovel the shit, be in the mailroom, load the boxes, write the cards. You're going to have to do everything, right? But you need to understand that as somebody who is personally ADHD, I realize my strength is creating new things, but I need to get out of the way and know when to get out of the way and let competent people do the daily grind. and you're probably not that person for the daily grind. So that's my free piece of
No,
advice.
I definitely know that. There's come times when where I become out of breath, if I can say that, because then it hits. Yeah. Then I need to know I found something else, but there's still a very good idea. It's because it can still it's still making money. Yeah, you know this. You know this, but yeah, that's it. And can I ask one last question?
Yes, you can, of course.
Okay, when you have one really good supplier for your business, right? However, it might be that supplier, because I'm foreseeing something, then that might be that supplier would not be able to handle the capacity. But the taste of that one supplier is the taste that kind of frames the business, if I have to say that. However, my concern is, do I then look for another supplier, which I am worried about? Is it going to change the product? Obviously, it's going to change the product because everybody's hand is different. How do I deal with something like that when there's a new product going to be on the market, but it's not going to taste the same?
Every single business needs diversification. You can never rely on one client. You can never rely on one supplier. You can never rely on one industry. You can never rely on one market. You can never rely on one currency. Everything is about diversification. You need to answer that problem by solving the problem of diversification. You need to figure out how to get the QC exactly the same between both suppliers, or 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 more suppliers. And that might mean that you need to figure out how to own the means of production, how to own the recipe, how to own the actual process. But you need to understand something. If you put yourself in the hands of one supplier, you are going to be held over the barrel of a gun. This is business, and that is what happens.
Yeah, you get as much. I just needed to have that. That's funny because I really know these things. It's like you are basically repeating the things that I've thought about, but it's funny. It's just a confidence thing, I guess. Once you start getting up in a startup.
Well, I like to tell people I'm a professional reminder. Yeah. This is what I do. I'm a professional. I only tell people what they already know out loud.
Yes, that's true. That's one thing that I can say about starting a business. But I have been doing this one thing recently, and that is making calls, getting a couple heavy no's, and it really sucks. One of the things I'm trying to do is really what I've been starting, like how to start my email is, how was your salad? And just for them to open up my thing and having some cold calls. But this is something really, it's not saying that it's getting to me, the constant no's. It's the yes and then the no. How do you navigate that? But some people say yes, and then when you're getting excited and you're like, yes, I've got that. But then the next moment you're like the no. And I don't know, it takes me time to wing myself up.
No is only a yes waiting to happen, number one. Number two, yes doesn't mean yes until the money's in the bank account. Okay. And most importantly, business is all about a whole bunch of no's waiting to be turned into a yes.
That's a sticker. Yeah, that's a sticker. Thank you, Justin. You really have given me a lot to think about, and especially having a conversation with my partner in that sense.
So if you found value from this episode of the Hustle Podcast, be sure to hit that follow or subscribe button depending on the platform that you're on so that you never miss any of my uploads. Also, if you are appreciating this content, please drop me a review on your favorite podcasting app. It goes a long way to helping new people discover the podcast, and this is how we get great information out.
This episode was brought to you by MoneyTribe21.com. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform.